Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to another video, and welcome back to another case study. Right behind me I have a 2009 Chevy Malibu. This is the hybrid. It's got the Ecotech engine. Customer complaint is that the panel inside for the AC control is not powering up. So the customer did tell me that he checked the fuses and he didn't find any blown fuses, so he wanted me to check it out. Anyways, we got the vehicle here. Let's go ahead and get started. By the way guys, sorry about any background noise. These guys are out here building up this steel building structure. If you've been following my videos, you'll know that earlier this year the structure actually caught fire, so they're rebuilding it now. So if you ever been curious about how they put together these steel warehouses, see that guy up there welding? That's pretty cool. Man, it almost looks like a commercial for Ford pickup trucks. Anyway, back to the vehicle. So let's go ahead and move inside. I've got the key right here. I'm gonna go ahead and stick the key in the ignition. Let's go ahead and turn the ignition on. And the guy's saying that this AC panel is not powering up, so let's turn the blower on. I don't hear the fan coming on. There is no air coming on. Doesn't seem to matter what mode we put this in. Looks like this button is not lighting up. None of this is working. So it definitely looks like this thing is not powering up. I think first things first, let's go ahead and pull a wiring diagram and see where this thing gets its power and ground from. All right guys, so we're here at the computer in the back of the shop. I've got Mitchell pulled up and we're looking at the wiring diagram for the automatic climate control system. Now, if you're having trouble reading this, it's not you, it's not your screen. I can't read it either without having to zoom in. So we're gonna zoom in so that we can get a little more detail. And what we're gonna do is we're going to locate the panel that's inside the vehicle, or what they call the HVAC control module. So if you look right over here, you'll see it says HVAC control module, center of dash. That's going to be this structure right here. This is going to be the panel that we're looking at. Now, because this panel is not even powering up, the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to check for powers and grounds. So we're going to look at all of the wires that are connected to this module, and we're going to determine which ones are going to be a voltage power source and which ones are going to be a ground. So we may actually have multiple powers and multiple grounds that power up the module. Let's go ahead and look through this. You'll see that at each of these wires we have a small description that tells us what that wire is for. So if you look over here, you see low ref. That's going to be a reference voltage for these sensors over here if you follow it down. But what we're going to be looking for is going to be ignition voltage or battery voltage. So let's go ahead and go down the line here. The first few pins are low reference. We're going to ignore those. You see over here, the next one is a ground. That's going to be pin 6, this black and white wire. We're going to highlight that one. Let me zoom in a little bit closer so that we can see it with a little more detail. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that a little bit better. Alright, so we're going to be looking at the ground on pin 6. Next up we have this ignition 3 voltage on this brown wire. I believe that's going to be an ignition voltage feed. Now let's go ahead and highlight that wire. And what I want to do is I want to look at it and follow it to the next part of the diagram. So if we follow this highlighted region, we zoom in, it turns into number 6. We're going to go to the next page and we're going to find number 6 on the next page. Let's zoom in over here. Here's number 6. We'll follow this highlighted wire up to the HVAC control ignition fuse. This is a 10 amp fuse that gets its power through this run relay. Now this run relay is controlled by the BCM. If you look right up here, this is going to be the body control module. So the body control module is going to control the ground side of this relay, which is what controls the power that comes out of this BCM here and feeds the HVAC module. Now the important thing about this power is that it's only a power when the ignition is on. So when you switch the ignition on, this relay gets energized, this switch closes, and the power gets sent through this 10 amp fuse, and that power makes its way to the HVAC module. So that's going to be one of the powers that we need to check. Let's go back to the previous page. Again, looking at this, we're going to be checking for a ground here at pin 6. We're also going to be checking for an ignition voltage feed on pin 7. And if you look here on pin 8, it says battery voltage. So if you look right over here, you'll see it says battery positive. That's going to be pin 8. Let's highlight that one. And I'm going to follow it over. And we're going to see it turns into number 7 and it continues on the next page. So let's go ahead and find number 7 on the next page. It's going to be this red wire. Let's follow up that red wire. And if we follow it up, you'll see that it comes from this HVAC control battery fuse. It's a 10 amp fuse. Now the really interesting thing is, according to this wiring diagram, this 10 amp fuse also feeds the data link connector at pin 16. So this is also going to be the battery power feed for the data link connector. So it is possible that if we have some type of communication issue, or if we have an issue where we're trying to use a scan tool that requires the power from pin 16 to power up, and the scan tool is not powering up, then we may have a problem with this fuse being blown. So that's one of the things we need to check. Let's go ahead and move back to the first page. Oh, and by the way, this battery positive power is going to be a power at all times, even with the ignition off. So that's important to note. Let's go ahead and continue down the line. You'll see we have some serial data lines, sensor signal lines, low ref lines. We also have controls for the recirculating motor, the mode door, and also the air door. Looks like we have the request signal for the AC and some more reference voltages here. And then we have signal lines for the air door positions. So it looks to me like we pretty much narrowed it down to what we need to be looking for. Again, starting at this ground, which is this pin 6. It's a black and white wire. Then there's also this ignition voltage feed on pin 7. And there's also the battery positive feed on pin 8. So those are going to be the 3 main things we're going to be looking at. 2 powers and 1 ground. And remember, the ignition power is only a power when the ignition is on. So as long as we have all these 3 things present at the module, then there is no reason that this module should not power up. So let's go ahead and move back to the vehicle and we'll go from there. All right guys, so real quick, before we go ahead and start trying to remove the panel for the HVAC control unit, there's a real quick check that we can do. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to move down here to the OBD2 data link connector, and I'm just going to take a little scan tool like this. What I have is this model number YA101. Now the thing about the scan tool is that it does not have a battery built into it. So the only way the scan tool can power up is by utilizing the power from pin 16 of the data link connector. And of course, it's also going to utilize the ground on pin 4. So as long as we have good power and ground on pin 16 and pin 4, this scan tool should power up. So let's go ahead and plug it in. Got the connector right here, where it's going to go ahead and shove it in here. And take a look. As you can see, our scan tool is powering up. While we're here, I guess we could do a quick code check. Let's go ahead and move into diagnostic. As you can see, we have 2 codes present. Now the nice thing about having a little handheld scan tool like this is that you can pull up a lot of different information. You can look at your monitors, you can check to see if they're complete or not, and you can even look at mode 6 with this little scan tool. So definitely a good useful tool to have, whether you're a professional or you just do this DIY. And to be honest with you, I think that anyone who owns a vehicle should probably buy a low-cost scan tool like this just to have in their car. And I mean, this particular scan tool, you can pick it up on Amazon for less than 20 bucks. So I really don't think that there's a reason that anyone should not have one of these. Anyways, like I said, while we're in here, let's go ahead and do a code check. Go to read codes, check stored codes. You'll see we have a code for catalyst efficiency, bank 1, PO420. Let's go ahead and move on to the next code. You'll see we have a PO700 transmission control system. Now, neither one of these codes are related to the problem that we're having with the HVAC control unit, but I just figured it was a good idea to go ahead and check it while we were in here. And like I said, the main reason that I wanted to hook up the scan tool is because the simple fact that this scan tool was able to power up utilizing the power on pin 16 tells me that the fuse that feeds the power to the HVAC control module is good. So now that we've quickly eliminated that, let's go ahead and move to removing the HVAC control module. All right guys, so I've already got the HVAC control module out. It was actually pretty simple to do. Just a few clips and some trim pieces that we had to pop out, and 2 screws that held this piece on. So if you look at the back side, you'll see that we have 2 connectors here. This is the connector that we're going to be concentrating on. Now if you look up closely here, you'll see that the connector is numbered. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the way this is numbered is starting at the bottom right here. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the 3 wires we're going to be concentrating on are going to be 6, 7, and 8. And if you recall, according to the wiring diagram, 6 is going to be our ground. This is going to be the black and white wire. 7 is going to be our ignition power feed on this brown wire. This is going to be the power feed that's only present when the ignition is on. And then finally pin 8 is going to be a battery power on this red and white wire. And again, if you remember, this battery power is going to be battery power all the time. So what I have is a back probe here. I'm just going to go ahead and start at pin number 6. I'm going to back probe the ground wire. Let's go ahead and slide that in there gently. And what I'm going to be using is going to be the power probe. I've already got it connected to the battery, and as long as I touch a good ground with this tip, the power probe will beep and it'll light up green. So let's go ahead and touch it. All right, so as you can see, we are showing a good ground on pin number 6, which is the black wire. Let's go ahead and move over to pin number 7, which is going to be our ignition voltage feed. I'm going to go ahead and touch it with the power probe. And this time, if there is a power, the power probe will beep and it'll show red. Let's go ahead and put it in there. And as you can see, we are not showing a voltage on that. Let me show you one more time. We're pretty much showing 0 volts and we're not showing a power. So that looks like it's going to be a problem. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is pin 8. It's going to be our battery power feed. By the way, I forgot to mention, the ignition is on. So the ignition switch is in the on position. So we should have had power on that pin 7. Now we're on pin 8. Let's go ahead and put the power probe in. We should have battery power. And as you can see, we do have a good battery power. That explains why we were able to power up the scan tool, because if you recall, the same fuse that feeds the battery power to this pin also feeds the battery power to the DLC connector at pin 16. So we definitely have a problem here. We're not getting any power to pin 7, which is the ignition power feed. And if you recall, that power feed does come from the BCM. So let's go ahead and move back to the wiring diagram and figure out our next step. All right guys, so moving back to the wiring diagram. If you recall, we did not have power on pin 7 at the HVAC control module. And if we follow it back on the wiring diagram, this power actually comes from the body control module. Now looking at the body control module, you'll see that inside the module there is a run relay, which is controlled by the body control module. And what this relay does is it sends a power out through this 10 amp fuse, HVAC control ignition fuse, and that's what's used to power up our HVAC control module. So I think it's pretty obvious the next step that we need to do is we need to locate the body control module. And the first step we need to do is we need to check this fuse, make sure that this fuse is not blown. And if the fuse is good, we need to locate this relay and run some tests here. So let's go ahead and move to the vehicle and see if we can locate the body control module. All right guys, so moving over to the passenger side of the vehicle. If you look right over here behind the center console, you'll see this is where the BCM is located. And if you look at the BCM, you'll see that there are a number of different fuses on here. So what I have is this diagram here, and I've already located the fuse that I'm looking for. It's going to be the HVAC control ignition, this 10 amp fuse right here. So if we look at this BCM, it's going to be this 10 amp fuse right here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the power probe. The ignition is on, and I'm going to touch both sides of the fuse, and if this is a good fuse, we should have power coming in and power coming out. So let's go ahead and check it. See, it's lighting up green. There is no power there. Let's go on to the next one. And it's also lighting up green. There is no power there. So this doesn't look like it's going to be a problem with the fuse. Now what we need to do is we need to locate the relay, which I believe is on the back side of this BCM, and do some checks. All right guys, so I managed to unbolt the BCM and flip it around. And if you look at the back side, you'll see that we have 2 relays here. And what I have printed out over here is going to be a layout of the 2 relays. And the one we are looking for is going to be the run relay, which according to this diagram is going to be the one on the left right here. So if we look up at it, that's going to be this one. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is pull this out, get that out of there. And I'm going to install a relay jumper. So this jumper is going to allow us to run tests while the relay is plugged in. So I'm going to go ahead and push that in. And what I'm going to do before I install this relay on top of the jumper is I'm just going to check with the power probe, because at this point with the ignition on, we should have 2 battery power feeds. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have the ignition turned on. I go ahead and do that. Ignition is on. Let's go ahead and take our power probe. So I'm going to go ahead and touch each of the legs of the relay, and we should have 2 battery power feeds. So let's start down here. Got nothing there. We're showing the ground. Let's check the other one here. and we're showing 3.4 volts. Looks like maybe that's a bias voltage. Let's check this one up here. We're only showing 0.6 volts. And let's check the next one over here. 3.4 volts. Okay, immediately we do see a problem here. We're not seeing the two battery power feeds that we should be getting at the relay. Let's go ahead and move back to the wiring diagram, and let's review where the power comes from for this relay. All right guys, so moving back to the wiring diagram. If you recall, we did locate this run relay, and what we found was that we did not have the two battery power feeds that we should have had on these two pins here. Now, according to this wiring diagram, if you follow this up, these two powers are spliced from the same power source. And if you follow it up here, it just says hot at all times. Now, the only thing I don't like about this wiring diagram is that it's not specific in telling us where this power comes from. All it says is hot at all times. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we know this is a voltage feed directly from the battery, but it would be really nice to know specifically which wire and which pin is our power input to the BCM that feeds the power to both of these pins on this relay here. Now, what we could probably do is locate a wiring diagram specifically for the body control module, and we can go down the line, check all of the powers and grounds that feed the body control module, because we can only assume that one of those power feeds going to the body control module is going to be the power feed that feeds this run relay here. But before we do that, I think there is one really quick check that we can do, and that is going to this pin right here, which is labeled E2 on the X4 connector. It's a red and black wire, and if you follow this red and black wire up, you'll see that inside the BCM, it's also the same shared power feed for this relay. So a simple check we can do is check to see if we have voltage coming out of this pin here. Now, if we have voltage coming out of this pin here, then we know there's a problem inside of the BCM. Now, if you look at this red and black wire, if you follow it out, you'll see that it actually goes over to the blower control module, and it's labeled here as battery positive. So this is going to be the battery power feed that feeds the blower control module. Now, we could probably try to locate the blower control module and check it there, but if you look here, it actually says that it's located on the rear of the HVAC case, so this is probably a little more difficult to get to. We're already at the BCM. It's probably simple enough to locate this X4 and check to see if we have sufficient voltage coming out of this pin. All right guys, so moving back to the vehicle, I've already located the connector and the E2 pin, which is going to be this red and black wire right here. It was pretty simple to find because it's right above the relay. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the power probe, and the tip is small enough to fit right in here, so I'm going to go ahead and touch it. We are inside and making good contact, and if you see, we only have 0.8 volts coming out of that connector there. So we definitely have a problem here. What we're going to need to do next is we're going to need to pull a wiring diagram on the BCM, and we're going to need to check all of the power inputs to this module. So let's go ahead and do that. All right guys, so moving back to the computer, once again, we've got the wiring diagram pulled up here for the BCM. And if you look over here, you'll see it says BCM body control module. Let me show you what we found, because we might actually get pretty lucky here. So if you look right over here at these last three pins on the X3 connector, you'll see that these last three pins are designated as battery voltage. So you'll see D10 battery voltage, D11 battery voltage, D12 battery voltage. So these last three pins on the body control module are specifically battery voltage feeds. But let me show you what D10 leads up to. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight D10, which is going to be this wire right here. And if we follow it up, you'll see that it goes to the fuse box. Now, this is the fuse box. It says underhood fuse box on the left side of engine compartment. Now, the really interesting thing about this wire here is if you follow it up, it goes to this 30 amp fuse, which is fuse 19. And if you look at the label, it actually says run relay. So it looks to me like this is the fuse that we need to be looking for. I think the next step is pretty obvious. Let's go ahead and locate this fuse box under the hood, and let's check this 30 amp fuse. All right guys, so moving under the hood, I've already located the fuse box. And if you look right over here, I've got the cover, and I've already located fuse number 19, which is going to be this 30 amp fuse right here. Now, if you look closely, hopefully you guys can see that, this 30 amp fuse right here. If you look closely, you can see that this fuse is still intact. It does not look like it's burned, nor does it look like the contact inside is separated. So just visually looking at this fuse, it looks good. I think probably what we could do is go the extra step, pop the little cover off, use a test light, and touch both sides of the fuse. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. All right guys, so I went ahead and popped the little cover off of the fuse, and I've got my test light over here. It's hooked up to battery negative, so when I touch a power, you'll see that this test light lights. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is touch each side of the fuse here, really gently. So I'm going to touch this side, and you'll see that the test light does light nice and bright. Touch the other side, and you can see the test light is lighting up nice and bright. So definitely looks like the fuse is good. I think the next step we need to do is go back to the BCM and check to make sure that the power from here is actually reaching the BCM. All right guys, so once again, moving back to the vehicle, I've already located the X3 connector, which is going to be the connector that we're looking for. And if you recall on the diagram, it said we were going to be looking for pin D10. That's going to be the power feed that comes from the fuse box and powers up that run relay. So like I said, looking at this X3 connector, I've already located pin D10, which is going to be this red and black wire right here. So I'm simply going to take my power probe and I'm going to stick it in there, and we are going to see if we have power. All right, I know it's upside down, but hopefully you guys can see that. We've got full system voltage at that pin. So what that tells us is that the fuse box is good. The wiring integrity between the fuse box and the BCM is good. This is definitely going to be a problem inside of the BCM. Again, if you guys recall, this is the power input that feeds the run relay on the back side of this BCM. And so the concept is pretty simple here. We have power coming in, but we don't have power coming out over here. So we can now say with 100% certainty that this BCM needs to get replaced. Let's go ahead and get one ordered and get this thing fixed. All right guys, so I was really hoping to show you the repair as far as replacing the BCM and doing any associated programming, but the customer just did not have the funds to do the repair, and they told me that they wouldn't be able to have the funds till after the holidays. So I mean, we might be looking at a couple months before they even decide to get it fixed. So at this point, there's really not a whole lot I can do, but I still think this video has a lot of information that's really useful. So even if we weren't able to complete the job, at least I was able to make this video and provide you guys with some useful information. So anyways guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it informational. If you did, please make sure to like the video. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thanks.